All right, guys. So as you saw from my Facebook post and Aloysius's great artwork, today we're going to be doing today we're going to be studying attacks along the diagonals, and the chapter is split into. So basically, the games we're going to be doing today are for the A1 H8 diagonal. Then we'll be doing games for the A8 H1 diagonal and so on. But these games are really nice, and they incorporate more tactical principles along the way. So once again, if you have any questions, please stop me. And yeah, let's start. So how many of you are familiar with Legal's Mate? So do you guys know this this famous game between Legal, who is considered to be the first professional chess player of all time? And the game went like this. It was a Philidor defense. So it went bishop c4, bishop g4, knight c3, and now the way it is taught in the books. This is not part of the chapter, by the way, but it's like basic knowledge. So his opponent, the game was played in I think 1750, and his opponent played knight c6, and here Legal just couldn't help himself and took on e5 with the obvious idea. Okay, not really obvious, but how does white win if black takes the queen on d1?
Bishop takes on f7.
Right, king e7.
And then knight d5 mate.
Right, so this is mate. But why isn't knight takes e5 a good move then? Because if d takes e5, then we just take the bishop and we're a pawn up, right? Anybody? Why isn't knight takes e5 a good move? Right, don't be shy, guys. This is the intermediate class. Yeah. In case anybody said anything, just so you know, your microphone might be muted. Niels?
Sorry, I dropped out, but what's wrong with now knight takes?
Yeah, exactly. So just knight takes e5, and now the bishop is protected, and white just blundered a piece. But the way this game is taught in the books, they will tell you that if h6 here, then Legal's brilliancy was knight takes e5. But in reality, Legal just blundered after knight c6, knight takes e5. But the story is that he was playing against like a prince or some sort of English royalty, and he was just sure that he couldn't help himself and he will take the queen, and thus this pretty game was born. Good. So now we are going to look at another game of his. But I just wanted to make sure that I just wanted to make. Actually, I'm not sure if it's him. Yeah, it's probably just somebody else with the same name because it's from 1930, and he would be quite old by that point. yeah, but this is like some chess must know, the Legos mate. All right. So let's start. E4, E5, D4, E takes D4, C3. Now for you, E4, E5 players, this opening is not very good for white, but you do need to be a bit careful with black. So I think the best move here for black is D5, but also you can just take the pawn. And after, oh, sorry, after bishop C4, you can basically just grab all the pawns if you want, but you do need to know this move here, D5. Point being that you need to get some pieces out quick because you already have enough pawns as black here, and you don't need to be afraid of bishop takes f7 in this position, just because, so you can play knight f6 here, just because after bishop takes f7, king takes f7, queen takes d8, there is bishop b4 check, and you'll be getting the queen back. So yeah, if you get here, if you get this as black, either play d5 here or here. So don't do something, I don't know, passive like knight f6 or something. You need to start giving material back in order not to lose. Good. So, but in this game, queen b3 was played. And after queen b3, black played bishop c5. Bishop c4, attacking on f7, queen e7, defending, knight gf3. White is not really afraid of letting black capture on e4, just because it's black is so underdeveloped here that a move like, I guess, king d1 is very hard to meet here. Just threatening rook e1. Also, bishop f7 is still a threat. So black would have, although he's material, oh yeah, and knight c3 is coming with tempo. So black will not be enjoying this position, although he does have extra material here.
Can I not play c2 in that position?
Yes, sorry, I think, oh yeah, sorry, he took, yeah, right, this, I was wondering about that. So after yeah, queen b3, yeah, after queen b3, he took on b2 first. Sorry about that. So this is the position, bishop c5, oh. Bishop c5, bishop c4, queen e7, knight gf3. Yeah, and now obviously the c2 thing is not a problem anymore. And yeah, this looks way worse than before, because now g7 is hanging. Oh, sorry about that. Now g7 is hanging, and f7 is hanging, and I'm threatening rook e1. And yeah, black will probably resign in a few moves. So black did not take that pawn wisely. Queen e7, knight gf3. Knight f6, knight e2. Same principle. Castles. Oh no, sorry. And now he took. Yeah. And now against takes, there's no need to go into that takes in king d1 line. You can just castle, and black will basically have the same problems as before here. So he took on d2, just to not run into rook e1, and castled. And here, I will let you guys think for a bit. But this is a very pretty solution to the position for white. So we are 3 pawns down as white here. Marley?
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, hello. Right, so it's white to move in this position. We are 3 pawns down, but we obviously have a huge lead in development. So how do we take advantage of it? There's a really basically winning plan here as white. Not really plan, sequence.
So what would be the reply? Queen G3?
Right, so Queen G3, we are threatening mate in 1 on G7. Now the F pawn can't move. So, and Queen F6 will just get taken by the bishop. So I guess G6 is the only move.
And now back to C3, maybe? Queen C3.
Yeah, that's it. So after Queen G3, now this is a very big problem for black because he can't defend that pawn because this pawn is pinned. So he needs to push it. Queen F6 will get taken. So, and after G6, just Queen C3 back, very elegant. And now Queen G7 mate is just unstoppable. So yeah, quite a sudden end to the game there, but it does make sense that if you just start grabbing pawns in the opening as black, not really develop anything, you will just run into trouble here. So yeah, this is a pretty basic but a very pretty example in my opinion. Just Queen G3 first, weaken that diagonal, and then come back. And now there's just no move for black. Very good. Let's go to the next game. So this one's a bit harder, but it's very nice, and it does showcase some really nice play by white. So we have knight f3, c5. I'll actually put it into training mode. Yeah, c5, b3, knight f6, bishop b2, knight c6, e3, d5, bishop b5, e6, knight e5, queen c7, castles, bishop d6. Once again, whenever you have like questions about the opening or something, please feel free to ask. So bishop d6, knight takes, bishop takes, b takes, and bishop d3. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I was just about to say it's usually in this position that you take with the bishop and try to establish a good knight on e5, and yeah, that's actually what happens. So this didn't really make any sense. Right. So bishop takes c6, f4. Now we have a very strong knight on e5. Very pretty bishop here, and we got rid of our, let's say, not so great bishop, white square bishop. And now also in these structures, one of the main themes here will be the white square bishop of black. So if there's two ways to play these positions usually as white. So after castles, one of them would be just start going for the attack with something like rook f3, rook h3. Try to get the queen to h5, maybe push g4, just try to get some harmonious attack against the black king because of this bishop and not really many defenders on the black king. And another way you could play that if you want to be more positional, let's say, is you can fix the pawn structure with d3 and c4. So let's say something like d3. Let's make a move for black. I'm not sure. Let's say, I don't know, bishop a6, c4. And what you can see here is that this bishop doesn't really have any way to leave this pawn chain. So c4 will never be attacked really, as it's defended by 2 pawns and only attacked by 1. And on b7 is just hitting its own pawns, and on c8 it's very hard to get it out. So the only way this bishop could get back is by doing something like bishop d7, bishop e8, pushing f6 and getting that bishop out. But that will be very, very time consuming, and in the meantime you also need to put this knight somewhere. So it takes quite a lot of moves for black to get that bishop out, and he usually doesn't have time for that, as I can just start. After I fix this pawn structure, I can just start a kingside attack right away. But do remember this this pattern with the double c pawns and fixing them with c4, because it's usually very, very unpleasant for black because of that bishop. Right, but in this game, white chose the other plan, which is more straightforward, rook f3. Now, obvious idea, just rook f3, rook h3, maybe some g4, g5, queen h5, just, yeah, caveman approach, but it does make sense in this position. So black tried to prevent that by starting to exchange some pieces. So ideally he would want something like get f6 in to stop this bishop from becoming too powerful, and maybe also g6 to prevent rook h3, queen h5, but it's already a bit too many. The black king will become a bit too weak because of all that. So now black is threatening to take on e5. So what options do we have here? We can play d4 to keep our knight there on e5, but you don't really ever want to close down this bishop unless you're like absolutely forced to, right? Because this is your best piece on the board. You don't really want to take on d7 either, because you are sort of helping black develop. And yeah, going back with the knight, I don't know, to d3 or g4 looks pretty weird. So could you maybe find a tactical solution to black's threat? Any ideas?
Niels has put something in the chat.
Oh, right. Let me see.
His rook h3, and then after takes an e5, queen h5.
Yeah, that's it. So we can play rook h3. And now, I'm sorry, since I'm sharing the screen, I cannot really see the chat, I think. Or maybe I'm just illiterate, but I'm trying to see if I can see the chat, but yeah. No, I can't. So please let me know if somebody says anything in the chat, please. Yeah, so rook h3, point is after takes, we can just take back, and now bishop e5 is impossible because of queen h5 threatening mate and also the bishop. So because of that, obviously black could take and just go back with the bishop, and this will continue being just a normal game. In this position, I would probably go for something like, I don't know, probably the plan I described before, with something like d3, c4, and then get this knight out and maybe queen h5. Just develop naturally, because white also has just a strategic advantage because of this bishop in this position. Black, however, insisted on not going for that structure and played a move you really don't want to play as black. He played g6. Point being, he just doesn't want to ever see queen h5 in the position because of yeah, what we discussed. So now that he played g6, how do we exploit that? Meanwhile, I'm gonna try to see if I can. Oh, okay, I can see the chat, I think. Wait. Yeah, good.
Knight g4 maybe?
Knight g4.
The diagonal and threaten h6.
Yeah, knight g4 does threaten knight h6 mate. My problem with that move would be probably just f6 by black, shutting down that diagonal and maybe threatening to push e5. So you can imagine that. You can easily imagine black starting to be better if he does get e5 in on the next move, right? And now all your pieces are just sort of weird. As this queen isn't really getting out, these two pieces are not playing, and yeah, if you don't have something immediate here, you will just be worse as white. So knight g4 probably not it. I will keep the chat here. So Niels said knight g4 to h6 again. That's what we just discussed. So the way you usually think about, so you should do that in a chess game as well, but most people don't. But at least like when you're solving tactics and trying to, so the way you should think about moves is usually first you look at checks, and if they're, that's how you calculate at least. So you look at checks, and if you don't see any check that wins or a position you like, the second thing you look at is mate threats, right? So anything that threatens mate. So knight g4 is an example of that move. You see if knight g4 works, it does threaten mate, is very forcing. Then the next thing we look at is captures, and then it's positional stuff, but that's not relevant for tactics.
Can we mate him with queen h5, and then if pawn takes, rook g3 check, king h8, knight takes f7, double checkmate?
That is a very good spot. Great. So queen h5. So after queen h5, we are threatening mate in one here. And if he takes, as Gregor very nicely pointed out, this is check. He's forced to go to h8, and now this will be mate. So very nice, Gregor. But the line does go on after queen h5. So actually, I'm gonna make you try to calculate it like this. So queen h5, right? How else can he defend from the mate on h7? He probably has to play something like knight f6, right? Also, Niels said knight takes g6, f takes g6, queen h5, g takes h5. Yeah, so Niels, yeah, in that position he just runs with the king, right? So he said he spotted this idea of queen h5, but he did it here where white just black just runs with the king, right? Because now there's no pawn on the f file. Good. So queen h5, knight f6. How do we continue? So try to think. Do you want me to put it on the board, or do you want to look at it like this?
Could we just try queen h6, and then there's threats of like discovered, like when the knight, then like after we can put a knight on g4 and try and force the knight away from the f6 square.
So you're saying queen h5, knight f6, queen h6, and with
And then
the threat
then
of
yeah, with the threat of knight g4, and then we can capture on f6.
So that was actually what was played in the game. So the game went queen h5, knight f6, queen h6. The problem with that was after d4, black managed to get rid of the attack. But you are onto something, so keep thinking. Queen h5 is the correct move. I just want you guys to think about the follow-up after knight f6. So, and try to again think about what I just said. So first,
What about queen h5, knight f6, and immediate knight g4? And we've got maybe ideas of knight h6 checkmate. Just not giving him a chance to play d4. Like instead of playing like queen h6, which gives him chance to, defend himself, you just go
Right.
queen h5, knight f6, and now immediately knight g4. And we're threatening knight takes f6.
all right. And what does black play after knight g4?
I mean, if he grabs a queen, then we'll just play knight takes f6. I think he's getting mated there, because then we could have rook g3 coming. So I don't think you can take the queen. So
Okay, so let's start. Okay, so what you're saying is correct. So knight f6, knight g4. But you do have to see it in the end, right? So the point is, if he takes your queen with the knight, there will be knight h6 mate, right? But and if he takes the knight, obviously, basic removal of the guard, there will be mate on h7.
So
Yeah, but you do have to see if there's a mate here, because otherwise you just gave up the queen, right? So try to calculate mate in this position. Everybody, not just Gregor.
Knight takes f6, then the king has to go to h8, and then you bring the knight back to h5 with check. The king goes back, and then rook g3.
So there's a couple problems with that. So first of all, after knight f6, king h8, if you play...
Oh, you can block with the pawn, yeah, okay.
Yeah, knight anywhere, he will block with the pawn. I guess you can take the queen back. So this would be something, and probably white is a bit better here, but that's not really what you're looking for. So, and also he's not forced to go to h8, right? He can go to g7. So, yeah, actually, let's do it by like one at a time. So let's first calculate knight takes f6, king h8. How does white win in that position?
can't we just like ignore his threat? And if we just go rook takes h5, he can't take either of the pieces because they can both deliver mate. So if rook takes h5, if he takes the rook, knight h6 mate from earlier. If he takes the knight, now rook g5 will be checkmate. So we just keep getting pieces into the attack.
That is true, right? So you're saying rook h5 right away.
Right now, yeah.
All right, let's see. So After rook h5, right? So do remember you did give up a queen, right? So after rook h5, you are once again giving him the possibility of playing d4.
Mm.
And yeah, basically taking out your most precious piece of the attack. So it obviously has to be something more forcing, because if he gets a chance to play d4, then you're not going to mate him. Anybody else? So after, okay, so we said we're calculating knight takes f6, king h8. So after knight takes f6, king h8, at the moment, none of our pieces are hanging, right? And we did establish that wherever you go with the knight, basically d4 or f6 is going to be a good reply, after which there should be obvious that there's no mate there. And black is just that material. So after knight f6, king h8, there has to be something else.
Just rook take h5 there, and then you're threatening rook takes h7, mate.
Very good. So how does that go? Knight takes f6, king h8,
Now
rook takes h5.
h5.
Now we are threatening rook takes h7 mate. Does everybody follow? So knight f6, king h8, rook takes h5. Now rook takes h7 is a mate threat. So how can he defend? The only move he can play is going to g7, right? So after going to g7 in that position, let's try to think of something there. I'm going to put it on the board, and let's try to calculate. I'll let you guys try to calculate it from there. So try to find mate here.
I think I've got it. If you go knight e8, double check, king g8, I think you just play rook g5 and that's it. So after knight e8, double check, he'll go king g6. Now you've got rook g5, and after king h6, bishop g7, mate.
Exactly, very good. So we have knight e8 check. Now if king g8, rook g5. If king g6, we have rook g5 check, king h6, and bishop g7 is mate. Very good. So then this is forced mate after, right. There's also h6 in this position, by the way. So let's try to see this one. Is there any difference? Yeah, so you're probably not going to find mate here. I don't think there is one, at least as far as I'm seeing. But now the difference based on the other line is now you can just take on d5 with check, right? And wherever the king goes, I guess, I don't know, let's say king h7 in order to defend that pawn. If there is no mate here, at the very least, you will just take this, right? And now you will take this or develop a piece, probably just play something like knight a3 or knight c3. And now you should be able to see, probably knight a3 is better actually. You should be able to see that white is just clearly winning here, right? So this bishop is still a monster. I think we are up material, right? We are up
Yeah.
two pawns. This pawn is going to drop. So this is just winning, right, for white. So if you see this, you don't really need to calculate the mate anymore. Obviously, do look for it. But this is just completely winning for white, right? No, there's nothing to be seen here in this position anymore. Right, so that's about knight f6, king h8. What about king g7? Straight away. We've already kind of seen it, so.
Can you not just go rook takes h5?
Well, not really, because then you're going to be at in the same
The d4
position, but with the tempo down, right? So we're talking about this position, right? We had this position. The only difference was we had our rook on h5, and it was white to move. And we saw that we know how to win in that position, right? So how do we win here after king g7?
I think the same knight e8, rook g3, bishop g7 combination works, right?
Yeah, that should be it. The only difference is now he has the option of going g6, f5, e4, right? So let's look. So we have king g7, knight e8 check. Now if he goes to g6, then we have, I'll just put it on the board, but yeah, that's the solution. So we have knight e8. Now if bishop h6, if king h6, then we have bishop g7 and rook g3, and it will lead to the same position I'm about to show. And if he goes to g6, we have rook g3. Now if he goes to h6, bishop g7 is mate as before. But if he goes to f5, then this is a very pretty way to end the game with knight c3. Right. So yeah, pretty hard game, but very beautiful, and it showcases how important an attack along the long diagonal can be, and how dangerous. So the rook, knight, and bishop just checkmate the black king in the middle of the board, which is pretty nice. All right. So this was a pretty hard game, but important to see the patterns here. Queen h5, once again, very beautiful move. After which black is just defenseless. Also knight g4, very important. Good. Let's go on to the next game. This one is going to be a bit easier, but still important. So e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, e4, knight takes d4, the Scotch, knight f6, knight c3. This is now the two knights, d6, bishop e2, bishop e7, castles, and f4. Right. And now here black did something that many inexperienced players do. So he took on d4, probably with the idea of just probably just didn't want to have double pawns on c6, but this is not something you really want to do unless you have like a concrete follow-up, because you are just helping white develop, right? Which is never really quite a good idea. So here black probably should just continue with something like bishop b6 or bishop d7. Although I can see why black did play knight takes d4. If you do have to play this move in the opening, then probably something went a bit wrong. So try to avoid these moves in the opening. So knight takes d4. Probably, if you're wondering what black should play, probably, if not bishop d7, which is a bit passive, probably just rook e8 is sort of standard in these positions. Maybe trying for this this regroup with bishop f8, g6, and bishop g7. That is pretty thematic in these positions for black. So f4. Knight takes d4, mistake. Queen takes d4. Bishop e6. Bishop f3. Now just white just consolidates. Obviously he controls all the center, and yeah, in these types of position you should be really very happy as white. Also black just doesn't really have any active plan, so yeah. Bishop e6, bishop f3, queen e8. Very weird move, but once again it's hard. I guess queen d7 is logical as well, but I'm not really sure what black was going for with queen e8. b3, rook d8. I guess putting your rook against your opponent's queen is usually not a very bad idea, but still, this does look a bit funny, right? That's not how you want your pieces to be developed. So bishop b2. And now bishop g4. It does make sense, like what black. So usually we talked about this in last term's lecture. So if you're the side that has less development, right, or you have less space, not less development but less space, right, what you are looking to do usually is exchange some pieces, because then you're obviously going to have, even though you have less space, you will have more space for each piece, right? So you can imagine if these pieces are swapped off and these bishops are swapped off, then all of a sudden black doesn't really have any problems anymore, right? So let's try to take those off. Actually, no. Just imagine these bishops are off and these bishops are off. Then black can just play queen e7, rook e8, and not really have any problems. Although he has less space, now he has decent squares for all his pieces. So if you're the side with less space, try to exchange pieces, and if you're the side with more space, try to avoid exchanging pieces. Good. So bishop g4, knight d5, very good move. Now we are starting concrete threats against black, so he cannot take on d5 because of mate. This is the theme we are discussing in this chapter, this a1 h8 diagonal, and also the simple threat is just knight takes f6 and taking the bishop on g4. So now, although we are the side with more space and we want to try to avoid exchanging pieces, when we are forced to exchange pieces after he played bishop g4, we are going to make him exchange them on our own terms. So now we got the rook out, which is obviously desirable. So knight d5, bishop takes f3, rook takes f3, and here black made the final mistake with c6. you do want to get that knight out of d5. This is very annoying, but this just leads to forced win by white. So who can spot it?
Actually, I think you can take on f6 with the knight and then take with the queen if bishop takes.
All right. The point being that after g takes.
Bishop takes, and I think rook g3 next move cannot be stopped, right?
Yeah, in that position exactly, I think you're going to run into queen takes e4 and queen g6, because you did give up your queen for a light piece, right? So you're going to be an exchange down.
In which position exactly?
So after knight takes f6, bishop takes f6, queen takes f6, g takes f6, bishop takes f6. That's what you said, right?
Yeah.
Now black will just take on e4 with the queen.
All right.
And when you check, he will go back with the queen and be winning basically because of the. Actually, you can take the exchange back on d8, but I think that's it.
Do we need to do rook g3 check first before like we take with the bishop? So rook g4 check, then the king has to go to h8, and then we mate on f6 with the bishop.
Exactly. So
Better.
you are on the right track, Nils. Very good spot, but careful with the move order. So here after g takes, we just have check and mate. Yeah. So once again, important pattern with the rook coming up, and also queen sacrifices on the log diagonal are going to be very powerful. Good. Very good. And now we'll do one last. Actually, if you spot it quickly, we'll do one more, but probably this will be the last for today. So let's try to get it right. So yeah, let's do this one. A game of Ewe. I'm not sure if I'm probably not pronouncing that right, but a very important figure in the chess world. Knight f3, d5, c4, d4, b4. Once again, some opening knowledge. This is very. If you ever want to get frisky as black here, so obviously there are many moves in this position, but g5 is actually very good for black. As idiotic as it looks, if you do some computer analysis in this position, you will see that it's actually quite interesting. So yeah. There are loads of fun moves in this position. It's a very nice position, but yeah, do look into g5 if you're interested. Good. Let's go back. b4, g6, bishop b2, bishop g7. Now there's a battle of the diagonals going on here. So let's see. Knight a3, obvious idea. White just wants to play knight c2 and pressure this pawn. Also, there wasn't really any square for the knight. You could play d3, knight e2, but he just thought c2 is better. So e5, reinforcing that pawn in the center. Knight c2, bishop g4, normal moves. e3. Knight e7, which is already a bit dubious, I would say. Although it does look very natural. Problem is that after e takes d4, and h3, in this position, white is just basically after c6. There's no reason for which, let's put it like this, there's no reason for which white is not better. So we have the bishop pair. White doesn't really, black doesn't really control the center anymore. And whichever side, also more space, right? So this c4, b4 will give me a free space on the queen side and maybe some potential attack later. I can also just start running with the h pawn and create threats on the king side. If you will probably castle king side, right? So yeah, this plan will start becoming a problem. And also because of the pawn on b4, you're going to have problems protecting d4 in the long run, right? So even here, like after something like queen d3, it's not really clear how you're defending that. But white chose a more direct approach, which was actually his style of playing. So played h4. Simple idea. You're going to castle. I'm going to try to mate you with h5 and trying to use this combination, right? After I open the h file, the bishop on the long diagonal plus the rook will be scary combination. So h4, castles, h5, rook e8, already preparing for evacuation if needed. So long castles, and now we have very basic example of who is going to mate first, right? So black is obviously going to open some lines on the queen side, and in this position, it's usually the side who gets a rook on the open file against the opponent's king that mates first. But obviously, chess is not that simple, right? So many exceptions. But in principle, when you have kings on the opposite sides, you will try to attack with the pawns and open files for the rooks. So after long castles, a5, h takes g6, h takes g6, queen h3. Now this is not really a threat at the moment, right? Because queen h7, king f8 is not that big of a deal. But after a takes b4, there comes the moment where we need to think. So what can we do here? We can play queen h7, king f8, and try to look for a follow-up there. We can also just play king b1 if we don't see something immediate, and just maybe, I don't know, try to keep the threats. Although white's, I'd say black's biggest threat in this position is playing c5. So let's say something like, I don't know, even knight takes b4. C5 is not really something I would like to see as white, not just because this pawn is dropping, which is obviously not ideal, but just because this becomes a useless piece for the rest of the game. Okay, not really the rest of the game, but I will have to get it out by playing d3 and getting out this way. And it's pretty clear that in this position, the game is going to be ended by checkmate, not by a rook endgame or anything of that sort. So I would very much not like to let black push c5 in this position. So what do we see here as white? How can we deal with that problem?
Well, if that bishop wasn't on g7 defending, then we'd just have queen h8 mate. So we could try and get rid of that bishop by taking on d4.
Right. So yours and Niels is saying bishop takes d4. So what's the point, Niels? After bishop takes d4, bishop takes d4?
Sorry, knight takes, and then if queen takes, that's, I mean, same idea as I don't know who it was, had the mate on h8.
Right. So say the moves concretely. So knight takes d4.
Bishop takes d4, knight takes d4. Then what does black play?
There's queen takes
Queen takes d4.
d4. That now defends h8.
Ah, right. Sorry. Yeah. Never mind.
But why are you starting with the bishop? So Gregor, were you suggesting that as well? Bishop takes d4.
I mean, I hadn't even thought that much. I just thought take with any of them. But you're phrasing it as if knight takes d4 is better.
Right. Well, I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying that if you play, so you are giving up a piece, right? When you take on d4.
Yeah.
It is defended. So if you take twice, the queen will defend h8, and there is no mate there with just the queen and the with the rook, just the queen and the rook. So.
Oh yeah, maybe it'd be better to keep the bishop, keep the bishop alive longer, so that you might have ideas of like a rook h8 checkmate where the bishop like protects the rook and covers g7. So maybe, yeah, the bishop's more important than the knight right now. So it doesn't make sense to get rid of it this early.
Right. So.
Okay, so I thought that we start with queen h7, king f8, followed by queen takes on g7, then king takes, and then bishop takes on d4.
All right, and the point is that if black plays king g8, you have rook h8 mate in that position, right?
Yeah.
All right, so the idea is good. The problem with your move order is that once again, you can just play f6, right? So
Okay.
after queen h7, queen takes g7, and bishop takes on d4, he can just play f6. So let's put it on the board. There is f6 here, and also there is king f8 with the idea of rook h8, knight g8, and there is no mate. So, but this obviously this is sort of what we're trying to get to, right? This thing. So let's try to get this somehow.
Instead of queen takes g7, and that after so queen h7, king f8, queen h8 check.
Right, and takes and bishop takes d4, but once again f6.
Can't we just win a pawn immediately? I mean, I'm assuming there's something better, like even after this. But after knight takes d4, the piece can't be captured. If knight takes d4, bishop takes d4, queen h8, bishop takes h8, rook takes h8, mate. So we just get a pawn.
All right, very good. All right, that is what we're looking for. So knight takes d4, and now if bishop takes d4, we have queen h8 mate, right? So bishop takes. There's a funny story, actually a very hurtful story, not funny to me. So I had something like this. So I had to calculate the line for like, I don't know, I had very low time on the clock, but my queen was not here. My queen was like here. So let's just put it. So be careful when calculating, because my queen was like this, right? And I thought that here my opponent can play rook h8 and mate me, but obviously you can just take with a king. So and I lost the game because of that, because I didn't go into this line thinking that rook h8 is mate in this position. But yeah, in this exact position, yeah, exactly, queen h8 is mate. And also knight d4 doesn't just take a pawn, right? So now what is white's threat? Let's say it's white to move. How does white win here? And I want Dorian to answer this one. I'll think about it for a bit, but you were onto something earlier.
All right, so knight e6 with the idea that if pawn takes queen h7 followed by queen takes on g7, and I think that's mate.
Yes, that is mate. But be careful if you play knight e6. I will take on b2 with check and then take your. Okay, probably not take your knight because that is
Okay.
that is mate.
Do
I
we-
think, I think you can force it with just checks.
Yeah, do we need to do queen h7 check first,
And that's winning.
Right, give the full
and
line.
then do after
Knight
king
e6.
f8, then knight e6 afterwards with check,
After you take the bishop.
Yeah.
Exactly, that is very good.
and then there's queen takes g7 mate.
Just
Exactly,
one-
yes. So that is the threat, and also you can just take on g7.
Yeah,
That's
take,
why.
take first.
That's why I
And you're
said
mating.
Dorian, because he had this idea, right? So you can play. Obviously,
yeah,
what you said is just as good, Ben. But there's also queen h7, king f8, queen takes g7, knight d6, and queen h8 mate. So let's put that
Sure.
on the board. So yeah, white's threat is basically winning like this, or knight d6 as Ben said. Good. Yeah. So this was what it was very important to spot, and actually Black just resigned after knight takes d4 because there's no defense against this, unfortunately. So, all right. Very good, guys. It was a bit harder than usual, but yeah, obviously, if you want to get better, you have to break your brain against these types of problems.